Welcome to the premiere episode of Lonely on Top, HTLA's newest show, hosted by me, the intellectual kateTaylor. Yes. Producers mess with my microphone. Okay. You are listening or watching to New York's Best Talk, HTLA Radio 1. For our longtime listeners, now you can watch our shows as well and participate in the live Q&A session if you're joining by Google Plus in our HTLA Hangout. That's right. Very cool. All right. Thank you for joining me for this premiere episode. It's a show that's a long time coming, and its inspiration's drawn from my forthcoming book of the same name, Lonely on Top, Feminism's Truth. So what does it mean? Well, Lonely on Top is what I feel women today have found to kind of best describe where the last 40 years of feminism's predominance has left us. Many of you that have been longtime listeners are aware that, I founded a movement based on traditional marriage and family first, and most of all, pro-femininity. And in this show, I'd like to further delve into how we truly can have it all by incorporating the best of what feminism had hoped to grant us with what embracing the best of femininity will give us. Right. Okay. Okay, so tonight I would like to begin by discussing some of the history of feminism, where it came from, why it began, why it had a place then, but how the perpetuation of it, without its evolution really, has now become the single most destructive force in this country's history. Yes, I do believe that to be true. Now, it all began pretty much with, the second wave of feminism. The first wave started, obviously, with the suffragettes and the right to vote and all that other kind of thing. But Betty Friedan and the feminine mystique really got the whole thing kicked off in 1963 when she published that book to address what she called the problem that has no name. Now, she wrote that society cast women exclusively in the role of homemakers and then asked, is that all there is? The fallacy of it is since that suffrage movement, women have began occupying roles in all manner of professions, choosing not to marry, choosing to both work and marry when they married men that were right for them. See, that was the thing. They had the choice. But 1966, the National Organization for Women was formed, and that was dedicated more to the full participation of women in society. The precept of equal work, equal pay, equal work, and it pressured the government to support and enforce legislation that prohibited gender discrimination. Now, when Congress debated that landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination against race, conservative leaders decided to throw gender into the bill, hoping that it would get killed and nullified and nixed right there at the get-go. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So the strategy backfired and the measure was signed into law, and groups like NOW, the National Organization for Women, became dedicated to its enforcement. Here's the irony, though. It's decades later, and women are still complaining that they're not getting equal pay for the kind of work that they do, that men get more money for, right? They're still not making as much as men. So, all of that kind of for nothing. But it's 1968 now, and radical women demonstrate outside the Miss America pageant in Atlantic City. They even crowned a live sheep to, sort of poke fun at the whole thing. And there were freedom trash cans everywhere in America. And these were where women could throw symbols of feminine oppression. It was things like fake eyelashes and hair curlers and bras, girdles, high-heeled shoes. The media actually labeled them bra burners, but no one actually burnt a single bra. So that's pretty ironic. Yeah. And yet another irony, it's 2016, and we've seen the first overweight woman on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Okay. But it's so obvious that it's only there to please the feminists that, I call them the feminazis, that they weren't going to put it out without an alternate cover of a fit feminine woman. So, and to ensure that one magazine cover didn't so overwhelmingly outperform another, they actually put out a third cover of a woman in the sports world. So, an athletic kind of in between a supermodel and a man kind of thing, a female kickboxer. But for all of their protesting and defeminizing women and feminizing men, all of the Sports Illustrated covers, all the experiment really served to prove is that decades of all of this sort of nonsense, men are still going to want what they want. They're still going to want the type of women that they want. And it's not changed one bit, you know, except for their ability to say so freely. So, the word sexism that entered the American vocabulary in the 60s, and women became categorized as a target group for discrimination at that time. Single and married women even adopted the title of Ms. as an alternative to Miss or Mrs. And this was to avoid changing their identities based upon their relationships with men. And in 1972, Gloria Steinem founded a feminist magazine of that same name. That was the worst year in history. So, but here's where the unforeseen destruction kind of began with all of this sort of thing. Because in addition to the centuries-old tradition of family heritage and lineage and dynasty, women take men's names not to bear a label of possession, especially not anymore. But it's sort of a designation of the pride and the honor and the symbolization of the life transition of leaving your parents' home to begin a new home and family with the man you love and have chosen to spend your life with. How evil is that, right? I mean, it's just appalling that that's something that would kind of be picked out to be, made into this terrible thing. But, that it is what it is. But they also failed to consider the emotional and psychological impact it would have on the future generations of men for all these things. So here you're marrying the woman that you love, and, these bunch of B words are saying, oh, well, don't take his name, that kind of thing. I mean, it's just in every kind of way detrimental to a man's ego and his emotional state. And, it's just awful. It kind of declared that men were no longer needed, full stop. Yeah, I'll marry you, but I'm not going to take your name because you're not good enough for that. And, you're not as important as all that. So it really played on men's psyches in a really detrimental way over the last decades. And these are things that either weren't foreseen or really weren't cared about too much at all. So, I mean, this whole entire concept of women are equal in all ways to men. Well, here's a tip. You're not. It's just, despite what you want to talk yourselves into believing, you're just not, or else we would have all been born the same gender, but we haven't been. So equality is kind of a myth, really, truly, especially physiologically when it comes to doing the kind of things that men do. So during all this time, though, and here's the irony, no one bothered to ask, even once, what was the matter with her? What was the matter with Betty Friedan that she was so dissatisfied and she had so many issues with life? Instead of what was the matter with society, as she claimed, because there was nothing wrong with society. She actually closed her book with the line that she wants more than her marriage and her children to make her happy. Well, right there, no one clued in that this is a woman with issues, and we shouldn't change the way things have been done for centuries and centuries and centuries because she was not happy with her life. It's mind-boggling when you think about it in that way. Now, the reality is, again, there's nothing wrong with society. There ever wasn't. The problem was with women like her, women who had married wrong and or become dissatisfied with the life they themselves had chosen. It was a handful initially, and instead of looking inward to discover how, they first could be a better wife, mother, and woman, how they could first find something that would fulfill them in addition to honoring that once sacred role of nurturer and homemaker, they instead projected their poor choices on society. And ultimately, all these years later, destroyed it. Because here we sit, and if you ask me, it's a mess. The whole entire thing. It's just a mess. It's almost a prospect too scary to think of. How do we begin to clean it up? Because it's terrifyingly bad. So, in my opinion, the era that all this occurred in was really, truly the catalyst that allowed this to grow. It really contributed to the movement's growth in just about every way. Feminism really took root in the 70s. All this beginning stuff, like I said, the second wave of feminism took place in the 60s, but it really, really took root in the 70s. Free love, drugs, anti war sentiments, all these things made American women feel that they could do and say what they wanted without repercussions, and that they could. The majority of husbands were off fighting a war they'd never come home from, or when they came home, they didn't come home the same. So pretty much they were kind of on their own. It just coincided with, all these ideologies being thrown out there in the 60s. And now in the 70s, it was a lot of women in this country and not a lot of men. And so all of these things really kind of took root. So, but here's the thing that I don't understand. Instead of banding together to help the men of this country get themselves psychologically and physically back in shape and healthy and back on track, a bunch of female dogs incited the young last of innocent girls, growing up in the 70s, the very last of them, to go find security and role models and take a stand against this invisible oppression. Because truly, at that time, with most of the men gone and out to war and coming back needing care, there wasn't any more oppression. So, maybe in the 30s and the 40s, and you had especially the Victorian era times, this is where all the suffrage movement really took place, because in Victorian times, things really swung to the right. Everybody was super strict. Everything was super strict. Manners were everything. Corsets, the whole shebang. It was really, really strict, And so everything really swung right then. And that's where the initial beginnings of the feminine movement and suffrage took root. And now you flash forward to this time period, though, and Betty Friedan and all her dissatisfaction of the 60s, poor her. But then in the 70s, there were very few men to oppose or say, hey, well, okay, and even talk about it. They didn't even try to discuss it and say, well, we as women are dissatisfied and how can you fix it? And there wasn't even anyone around to discuss it with, even if they'd given it a chance. So this is why it was the only decade, in my opinion, that this really could have taken root and occurred. And then this led to the 80s, which I think everyone listening today has lived through the 80s here, right? So men who thought that they would become husbands and fathers and heads of households were instead, it was made clear to them that they were no longer necessary. Women had learned how to do it all. The divorce rate skyrocketed and men turned to the only thing that they knew they could do. They worked. So we had an 80s generation that was the most materialistic and commercial in history. And the last of families that were still hanging on by a thread, still trying to, keep it together as the nuclear family once was. They did the best they could, but latchkey kids became the norm. And very, very few of my friends even grew up with two parents in the home. So now let's fast forward to feminism today. Now, what once promised to liberate women from the tyranny of their husbands and fathers has produced a society where girls have absolutely no role models whatsoever as far as traditional women go, in my opinion. I think there's some pockets of the world that, of course, still have that, and of this country too, actually. A lot of the down home Midwest, the Bible Belt, places like that. But for those of us that aren't religious and don't, seek traditionalism for any kind of religious tenet or, because the Bible tells us so, it's really difficult to find traditional role models. So, but girls, they have an innate desire. It's just something they're born with to marry and create a home and nurture a family, And right now, all they have are stories from their grandmothers or their Kardashians as maternal examples. And this is not good in any stretch of the imagination. And the boys are so lost because there's absolutely no examples of, men being head of households anymore, except in those few places, like I said, in those situations, like I said, that the only examples they have are beta males, which are so incompetent that women have to rescue them from taking out the garbage because they can't do it themselves, or they're so repressed that they become alpha males to the extreme and they go on shooting rampages or date rape at college or attack anything that threatens that delicate fragment of what it remains to be masculine. So we've really gone all the way to the left so far now that it's created almost an antithesis of what the best possible outcome for feminism could have been. It's almost like we created a Frankenstein monster. And now instead it's the seedy dark side of feminism. And we're living in a society that's the mutation of the experiment gone wrong, really. And I try not to be so harsh, but that's honestly the truth of it. There's really no other explanation. So now there's something critical that feminists either couldn't foresee or didn't care about at the time, and that is nature for all eternity had functioned under the premise of yin and yang, not yin-yin, not yang-yang, and not yin allowing yang to pretend to be yang as long as it doesn't offend yin, right? So they never considered what would happen, like I said, when they took both parents out of the home, when firm examples of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man are either removed or blurred. And it's either one of those two cases today. So I've written a book and I'm doing the show because I have a teenage daughter who's fallen prey to the fiction that gender neutrality and equality is the wave of the future and the only way that, evolution can go. And because I have a toddler son that I'm going to make sure doesn't feel that way and has that example. I'm fortunate enough to be able to provide that for him. So I think it's important to kind of get this message out there. And so this is the purpose that I'm doing this show. And hopefully, you'll take something good from it. We're going to actually take our first commercial break now and take a moment to visit our advertisers and sponsors. And when we get back, we're going to talk about where we can go from here and so much more. So please stay with us. We will be back in 2 minutes. Oh my God, is he just...
You've got it locked to New York's best talk, HTLA Radio 1, New York.
The hot new accessory, brows that wow. New from Maybelline, New York, it's Brow Drama, our first sculpting ball brush with tinted gel. Just sweep, then sculpt for bolder, sculpted brows. New Brow Drama. Get the look at Maybelline.com. Maybe it's Maybelline.
When we arrived at our hotel in New York, the porter was so incredibly careless with our bags. And the room they gave us, it was beautiful.
A broom closet.
But the best part was the shower. My wife drying herself in the Egyptian cotton towels.
Shower curtain.
Defined the whole vacation for her.
Don't just visit New York.
Visit TripAdvisor New York.
With millions of reviews, a visit to TripAdvisor makes any destination better.
You will lose weight too with Nutrisystem. Get great tasting meals delivered to your door. And now you can save up to 50%.
I love my results. I'm Erin and I lost 30 pounds on Nutrisystem. After kids, I never thought I'd be back in bikini. I'm Cora and I lost 42 pounds on Nutrisystem.
Nutrisystem is based on the glycemic index, which helps you feel fuller longer.
I got this body eating pizza, pasta, even chocolate.
Choose 4 fantastic meals for less than $11 a day. Millions of people have lost weight on Nutrisystem, and you can too. And now you can save up to 50%.
I feel better in my 40s than I did in my 20s.
I feel sexy. I am back in a bikini again.
If I did it, you can do it too.
Call 888-651-SIZE now and save up to 50%.
You're listening to HTLA Radio 1, New York.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, welcome back to the premiere episode of Lonely on Top, only here on HTLA Radio 1 New York. I am your host, this intellectual kateTaylor. And for so much more of what we're bringing to the world of global media today, please visit us at www.newyorksbesttalk.com. If you're joining me via Google+, then please feel free to send me a question using the Q&A feature, and I will answer you live on the air. Yes, I will. All right. Now, in the last segment, we talked about the origins of feminism, my observations of it. You know, as a girl growing up in the 70s, being mandated to adhere to the Feminist Manifesto, but somehow internally knowing it wasn't all it was purported to be. It caused me infinite distress. It really did growing up. At the most confusing times of life, you know, I had only my mother, who was a traditional homemaker role model, but much older than your other average moms, and or, you know, the single moms of my friends. So I really didn't have much by way of what I felt, you know, I needed as a role model. So, and as a teenager, when it came time for, you know, sex and relationships, and it was very confusing as well, you know, because you had one person saying, oh, just do what you want and you're free and all this stuff. And the other one is stay and, you know, stay until you're married kind of thing. So there was really not a place for, you know, where I was at. Now, later in life, I was forced to be a single mother for 10 years. So I had, you know, that disadvantage, but it was advantageous in some ways, but it was certainly more of a disadvantage. You know, trying to raise a child by yourself is not easy, especially for someone like me who never adhered to that whole thing, you know. But now 10 years later, you know, I'm blessed to have it be the way it was intended to be, and trying to relate to you all the kind of unending peace and ease when you choose the right partner and you become intra-dependent instead of codependent, you know, and that sort of, that term and that, you know, ideology plagued us throughout the 80s. And it's no coincidence that all the psychobabble kind of stuff started in the 80s. You know, when you look at it, when you step back and you look at it objectively, you know, it's pretty amazing how drastically things changed from the 60s to the 90s. You know, we have all of these new neurological issues and all of these new mitigating circumstances. And, you know, I like to say we're raising a generation of pansies now. They're afraid to go out of the house. Pretty soon, everybody's just going to live virtually because, you know, either you can't do this or you can't say that, or if you do that, or if you say that, this is going to happen. And, you know, it's nothing like the world that it was even 40 years ago. In the best ways, and it's just so upsetting. So I think that the dilemma we face now is that girls growing up today, like I said before, have absolutely no tangible idea of what it was like, you know, before feminism came around. You know, girls my age and even a little younger will remember, you know, because their mothers weren't born, you know, the younger generations today, or they were at the tail end of the nuclear family. They have stories from their grandmas and things like that, you know. So we're just the only lucky ones that we still were able to have a bit of that last generation of innocence and what it was like. I mean, look around. Just look around you. The ideologies that float around, you know, but feminine girls still look like they always did. And feminist women, well, they do too. So, you know, pretty much that's what we've got. It doesn't matter all the rhetoric. Things are just going to stay the way they were intended to be, full stop. And all of this stuff is just getting in the way of us being able to live productive lives and having everybody be well adjusted. So the point is, the more that we mitigate and excuse men and women from living up to what was once a standard of place, the more future generations are going to lose that internal sense of identity and morph into something I know that I would rather not see. I wouldn't. Like I said, the kids today, I've said this on another one of our shows. I had a conversation with a 20-something girl in a market a few weeks ago, and even she doesn't understand this generation today, you know, of 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. And that's like a difference of 5 years. You know, that's pretty scary stuff when the 20-somethings don't understand the teenagers. So we have an issue when that's going on. So what's the solution? Well, I've always maintained, to make the future the best we can, what we're going to need to do is figure out how to combine the best of what feminism tried to offer. And yes, I am giving the benefit of the doubt that at least a couple of their motives were altruistic. And the best of what it meant to be a feminine woman, like back in the 40s when women were really women. Remember women in the 40s? They were always glamorous, always beautiful, always feminine, always mannerly, but they kicked ass too. And they did. As I seem to recall, they were pilots and they were spies and they were entertainers and they were teachers and they were a myriad of different things, but they always put family first if they had one. And they always honored their husbands and their marriages first if they were married. It doesn't matter. You go and look at the films of then and the films of now and the way women and men relate to each other. And it's more than light years apart. It's unrecognizable between the two. So there's no reason at all that women cannot still be all the things that they are today while working to rebuild the masculinity in men, because we need to rebuild our male population. They're decimated. In case you hadn't noticed, they're just utterly decimated. The advent of this new group that they had just stopped the rally. They just stopped them from meeting because some idiot claimed that they were trying to get together to commit mass rape or something silly like that. There's this new group that's dedicated to men becoming alpha males again. But here's the problem with that. It's run by a man. And I say the problem with that is it's run by a man who he himself obviously hasn't had a real life role model because of his age and the generation he came from. So, unless he's kind of our age and older, they don't remember firsthand what it's like. So it's going to be a little difficult. And I think you definitely need a current female perspective in there if you're going to create some kind of curriculum to get the men back to where they should be, because things have changed. Men shouldn't be Neanderthals to women, and but women, we watched a clip of this woman really mouthing off to this guy on the subway, and he finally hauled off and cracked her, and I was surprised it took him so long, because if she'd been talking to me like that, it wouldn't have taken so long. But of course, men are trained for that sort of thing. And women think that they can just get away with whatever they want when it comes to their behavior with men, because men can't touch women and all this kind of stuff like that. 40 years ago, you talk to a man like that, you're going to get smacked. That's it. Didn't matter who it was. That's just the way it was. And you didn't do it. And we have lost all sense of place and all sense of behavior and all sense of boundary and respect because of the way we are today. That oh, you blew on me, I'm suing you, or you blew on me and it's a sexual assault, so you're gonna go to jail. I mean, it's just ridiculous, absolutely utterly ridiculous. So, but there's no reason that we can't get what's best for each man and women together. We can do this if we combine the best of what was with what we've got today. Because we live in today. We can't deny that. As much as I wish we can go back, we can't. So now, the very best and most natural part of being a woman, wife, and mother, and I've learned this from experience, so listen up and learn from my experience, is knowing when to kind of step back and let the man do what nature tells them they do best. And you'll find that they will seek your counsel far more often than not. And you'll find that they'll value your opinion when you discuss things that are important to your marriage and to your family and to your future. But as women, we've lost the art of letting men absorb our opinions and then make the decisions. When feminists came around and they threw the whole thing about, well, we don't need men, we're just as good as men, and we can do what men do, and all this kind of stuff, they pretty much eliminated the need for men, at least in their minds. And with that, in subsequent generations, came our inability to learn how to kind of, I don't want to say handle because it's a bad term, but kind of handle men. Men and women are psychologically different. You have to approach women in a different way than you approach men. And I think that's another of the hugest problems with this gender neutrality thing, because it's not possible. We're not neutral. We're not Switzerland. We have our own chemical and physiological makeups, and here's a great example. You wouldn't approach a dog the same way you approach a cat. You just wouldn't do it. And it's the same with men and women. And feminism said, well, everybody's a cat, so just treat everybody like a cat and and that's fine. But that doesn't work because obviously half of us are cats and half of us are dogs, and that's just the way it is. So, and when we lost that art of kind of remembering that we're cats, but, we're getting ready to approach a dog and we have to do it in a certain way because that's going to not only keep ourselves where we should be and safe and all this kind of stuff, but it's going to make the dog happy too and feel the best the dog can feel. We need to kind of do that. And we've lost the ability and the art of doing that. So feminists, of course, they're going to say, well, that's not being true to who you are. You're telling us to be deceptive and to take a subordinate role in our relationship. And well, let me ask you a question. Do you take a subordinate role at work to your boss? Do you take a subordinate role to elders? Do you take a subordinate role to the judge when you're in court or the cop who pulls you over? It's no different just because you're married to the person. They deserve the same deference and the same respect and the same thoughtful communication that you would give to a stranger, probably especially more so. But because we don't think of each other in these terms, we don't relate to each other respectfully in these terms either. We just say whatever we're going to say. And usually we're a lot more horrible to our spouses than we are to strangers in the street for that reason. We give them more consideration. Well, I don't know that guy very well. I better not say this, or if I say this in a certain way, it'll be received better. But yet we don't say or think of those things to say those things to the people that we live with. And it's just shocking. So, all right. I'm not telling you that women are born with an entirely different skill set. Wait, I am telling you. Yes, I am telling you that. Right. I'm telling you that women are born with an entirely different skill set than men. And that has to be respected. And part of what feminism's done is said, well, and here's the funny thing. It didn't say, well, men have the same skill set as women, so they can do whatever we can do. It said, we have the same skill set as men. We can do whatever they can do. Well, no. No, because physically you're not the same as men. You don't think the same as men. And for the same reason that we don't say men have our skill set and they can do what we can do, because 99.9% of men will tell you, I can't give birth to children. And I can't, have the patience with the infant that you do. And, when the baby skins his knee or cries, that I can be the same way that you are with it, most men, real men, will just say, suck it up, you'll be fine, and we're all coddly and things like that. And there's a reason for that. This is the way we were made. This is the way nature intended it. So we make things function more expeditiously, peacefully, and in the best interest of everyone. That is a woman's superior skill set. Men are more tackle one problem at a time, and when that problem is solved, they'll move on to another problem. And therefore, this is the biggest problem men have with women generally. I mean, women have with men generally anyway, is we like to multitask and we can get tons of things done. And men just like to do one thing at a time and they've accomplished something, so now they can take a break. Well, we can't be angry with them for not thinking like us because we don't have that skill set. And when feminism came along and said, we can do everything that men can do, it was from that intellectual thinking of, we can do a lot of things at once, so we can do what men do too, right? So it's just a difference in the way that we're made up and a difference in the way that we think that started this whole thing, why they thought it was successful and why they thought it would be possible. And it is possible for us to emulate in the same way that it's possible for, a toddler to say a bad word after you stub your toe and say it. But that doesn't mean they get the meaning of it. That doesn't mean that they understand the magnitude of what they're saying, or anything like that. And it's kind of the same thing. And there are so many stories that we can get into, but we're not going to in this premiere episode. But we will, though, in subsequent episodes of why this is so. There's going to be so many examples that I'm going to tell you of why this isn't so. That we're just emulating what men can do. It doesn't mean that we're equal to them and that we actually can do all the things that they can do. We can pretend, just like men can pretend when we're out and they have to babysit. They do it, sometimes pretty well for a little while. But, they just couldn't do it like us on a long-term basis, the way that we do it. It's just different. Pretending isn't the same as doing. So now, like I said before, there's utterly, absolutely no shame in utilizing the gifts that you are born with to create a harmonious life for your family. We've forgotten as women that this is our job and this is our role in the family. Hence our daughters don't get to see us treating men in the way that builds their self-esteem and makes them feel like valuable members of their own relationship and family. So they get into relationships and they don't know how to do that with their boyfriends. So it just perpetuates that cycle. The bottom line is, and I'm going to say this now, and I probably should have a drum roll, but I don't have a drum roll right now. Okay. The feminists just sucked at being women. That's it. Bottom line, full stop. They just sucked at it. So they said, let's throw the whole baby out with the bathwater and no women should do it. So, and that's it. And because of the time that this occurred, like I said, the environment at the time, the fact that most of the men went off to war, came back screwed up, or didn't come back at all, there was virtually no resistance. It took hold and that was it. But that doesn't make it right. And that doesn't mean that we should still perpetuate that, that misnomer, that whole wrong thing. We realized, I hate to be, I'm probably going to hear this tomorrow in the Twitter, but we stopped the Holocaust. It was wrong. When we realized they were doing that and it was wrong, we put a stop to it. Well, feminism's wrong. And we know it's wrong because look at the state of our life and our society now from before. Just compare the two. Don't even take my word for it. Just compare the two, and that's it. And you can't say, well, it's due to other things because it isn't. We'll get into that in the next episode. But listen, men have learned to allow us to make decisions. They've gotten used to it. They've gotten used to letting us take over when it comes to all things home and family because we steamroll over their opinion on how to do things. That's it. And we just do it until they give up because we're just more tenacious than men. It's just the way we are. It's just another bit of our skill set that we have that they don't, right? But don't for 1 minute fool yourselves into thinking that they don't resent it on the most primal level possible because they do. They absolutely resent that you're gracing them with the other half of your bed and that you're letting them have the head chair at the dinner table because there's no truth to the substance to it for them. They sit at the head of that table and they sit and lay and sleep in that other half of the bed and they feel like frauds and they hate it and they ultimately hate you for it and don't think they don't. So this is all that needs to change. We need to get back to the genuineness of being men and being women and it being okay, and by pretending and doing this kind of feminist dance around the way men and women really feel, it's just creating all these other issues. You go ahead, you do everything yourself. This is another thing that we do as women. That's part of the feminist, I call it the feminist mistake instead of the feminist mystique. That's what I call it. And we try and do everything ourselves because we can. The feminists said we have to. And then we complain because we have to do everything. This is something we've been doing for decades now. When is it going to stop? It's just another fallacy of feminism. Women cannot have it all, and we can't do it all and be it all. We just can't. No one can. It's just a fallacy. Now, here's another myth. There's no such thing as a 50-50 relationship. Marriages that don't each give 100% in their respective roles fail in the long term every time, every single time. A great reason they fail is because with no defined roles for each partner, toes get stepped on and resentments build. And resentment kills relationships. And we know this. So, all right, we're going to take our second commercial break and then we're going to get back to some more things and to wrap it up for a little bit. And yeah, I can go on all night, but stay with us because in 2 minutes, we'll be right back to wrap it all up.
For the best talk, there's only one. HTLA Radio 1, New York.
It's a stick revolution. Now skin goes shine-free and naturally matte in just one step. New Fit Me Stick Foundation from Maybelline, New York. The first of its kind. Fresh gel foundation with an anti-shine powder core inside. Dissolves oil while it blends to a natural matte finish. For coverage that's fresh, flawless, One step perfect. New Fit Me Stick Foundation from Maybelline.
Stick with us.
Maybe she's going with it.
I stood outside assessing the situation. I knew it could be rough in there, but how rough, there was no way to know for sure.
Hey, guys.
Daddy, it's pink!
But hey, a new house, it's a blank canvas, and we got a great one, thanks to a really low mortgage rate from Navy Federal Credit Union.
Pink.
So she's a princess. You got a problem with that?
Hoorah!
Hoorah! 4 million members, 4 million stories. Navy Federal Credit Union.
I did try to lose weight on my own. I couldn't do it by myself. I needed help. I'm Amy, and I lost 28 pounds on Nutrisystem. Now I'm healthy, and I'm in the best shape I have been in my entire life.
Now you can eat the foods you love and still lose weight with Nutrisystem and save up to 50%.
I knew Nutrisystem was working the very first week when I stepped on that scale and I saw results.
Nutrisystem is based on the proven science of the glycemic index, which helps you feel fuller longer.
It's easy, it's convenient, it comes to your door, it's that simple.
Choose 4 fantastic meals a day for less than $11.
This year was the first summer I went to the pool with my kids and I was able to not be self-conscious.
Millions have lost weight on Nutrisystem. You can too, and save up to 50%.
It worked. Nutrisystem works.
Call 888-371-SIZE and save up to 50%.
Instead of mailing everyone my vacation photos, I'm saving a ton of time by posting them to my wall.
Ooh, I like that one.
It's so quick. It's just like my car insurance. I saved 15% in just 15 minutes.
I saved more than that in half the time.
I unfriend you.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
15 minutes for a quote isn't how it works anymore. With Esurance, 7.5 minutes could save you on car insurance. Welcome to the modern world. Esurance, backed by Allstate. Click or call.
For the best talk, there's only one. HTLA Radio 1, New York.
Okay, well, we are back. Thank you for staying tuned with us. This is Lonely on Top on HTLA Radio 1 New York. That's right. You can see all of our many wonderful media products. www.newyorksbesttalk.com. All right, now, where were we? Right. We were talking about resentment and killing relationships, right? But seriously, for thousands and thousands of years of relating and trying to figure out each other, because that's what we did. For thousands of years, we tried to figure each other out. We were just getting around to absorbing that concept that men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and there was a reason that those books were so successful. Dr. John Gray wrote them, I believe. But it's because they're true. They're totally true. What it means succinctly is that women are just innate caregivers and nurturers, and men are innate warriors, authority figures, and security providers. And that's it. And we can try really hard and we can pretend to do each other's jobs when there's only a one-parent family. But we're only ever pretending. We're never succeeding because we can't do the other person's job 100%. We just can't. Now, in order to truly have successful relationships, though, we also have to remember that in every single interaction we have with each other, with either a man or a woman, and in all relationships, not just intimate ones, we have to kind of keep these traits in mind, like I was saying before the break. It's very important. You would do it to a stranger on the street. You would do it to your boss. You would do it to, your kid's teacher at school. You'll speak to your son or daughter's female teacher in different ways than you will a male teacher. It's just human nature, right? So no matter how many utopian equality and neutrality kind of concepts we create and cling to in this generation, and you have to remember human nature hasn't changed and it's not going to. Chemically and physiologically, boys are boys and girls are girls. It's the way it's going to be. We think in our own ways. We behave in our own ways. And no matter how much we pretend to the contrary, it's going to stay that way. Now, we've also gotten somehow brainwashed into the idea that masculine and feminine roles are bad, that they're just bad and we need to do away with them. They're evil. Oh, you're a girl. Evil, evil. I mean, I've actually had fights with my teenage daughter because I didn't want my son to like have a pink room. You know, she didn't get that, it was just a thing. A green room's cool, yellow room's cool, but I'm not going to subject my son to a pink room. I'm just not, and she couldn't understand, well, pink is a pretty color. Yes, for a girl. Doesn't matter if it's a girl or boy. Why can't he like pink? So it was a big argument. And it's not that he can't like pink. It's just, there's no reason to force pink upon him at this juncture. If he grows up and chooses pink, awesome. But I'm not going to force pink upon him. And that's what she wants me to do. So again, we're in this generation of like gender neutrals. And it's the most dangerous generation yet. And I make light of a lot of things, but I don't say that lightly. This really is the most dangerous generation we've had thus far. Because in principle, it's beautiful. It sure is. Wouldn't that be awesome if everybody was equal and everyone was included and, all these wonderful things that the teenagers today want? It would be, sweetie. And we've tried it. We've tried it before so many times, but they don't know that, But in practice, it's going to prove deadly to our evolution. It really is. We've stopped because of it. We've stopped seeking to understand each other at our nature's core. And we've stopped learning to work with what we've got to make it the best that we can be because of it. Our existence isn't something that we can go back to the drawing board and say, do over. It is what it is. And we're men and we're women and we're not neutral and we're not interchangeable. It just doesn't work that way. I get the concept that gender isn't based on your sex organs that you're born with. I get that. And as a psychology student, I understand that and it makes sense to me. But we can't live that way in practicality. It just doesn't work. So, we don't need men to procreate anymore. Well, yeah, you do. Where's the sperm going to come from? You're going to create that in a lab. And then, all right, where are the human beings going to come from? Because that's next. It just doesn't work. Now, a little later on in the episodes, in my future episodes, we're going to talk about parenting and further role necessities for a healthy emotional family life. But the one thing that's most important that feminism took away and really kind of royally screwed up is that children are meant to have two parental roles to be raised in order to feel well-adjusted and secure in their own skin, their home, and ultimately the world. Now, I would say two roles, not two parents, because I understand that there's unconventional families that are successful, that are of, the same sex, because at least one has taken the role of the nurturer, which is traditionally the feminine role, and one has taken the other role of the authoritarian, which is, traditionally the masculine role. Right, but you can't do it. And we're going to get into why you can't do that in future episodes. But another sad casualty of women being tricked into thinking they can successfully single parent, that's one of the things, is that no one can equally be both traits effectively. You can't. You're either a natural nurturer, so your child lacks structure, or you're a natural authoritarian, so your child lacks nurturing. And it doesn't matter how much you try to be both. You can't, because naturally you're wired one way or another. There is no human being on this planet who is equal amounts nurturer and equal amounts authoritarian when it comes to how they raise children. You're either one or the other. So you're only ever pretending to be the other. So it can't substitute for the real thing. It just can't. That's why kids need two people to raise them, not just one. And that's it. So, but like I said, future episodes. Next week, we're going to get into the decline of America. And this is going to be a pretty heavy, don't forget, these shows are going to go kind of based on the chapters of my book as well. So they're going to go in order, and I'm not going to be changing topics in the middle. So next week, we're going to get into the decline of America and some more tangible things that can be chalked up to everything we've been talking about here tonight. I will bring for you and I will demonstrate for you. People like to blame poverty and racism and political decision-making for the state of society today. But I know that everything that's going on can be directly traced back to the fracture of the family and the hijacking of the home. And it all started when feminism started. Why? Well, as was so eloquently put in the beginnings of this second wave of feminism, not every woman wants to wear pearls and bring her husband his pipe and slippers when he comes home from work. Some women want careers of their own. Literally, that was one of the tenets of this second wave of feminism. Well, tell you what, I married right. See? So I get to have a career of my own and wear pearls and bring my husband his coffee and cigarettes before, during, and after work because I married right. See how that goes? So I married a real man who loves and respects me and encourages me in everything I choose to do. And I respect him enough to listen when he tells me I'm doing too much and the important things are getting neglected, like my well-being included. And it's time to take a break or else, and that's just the way it is because that's another trait that women have that men don't. We'll go, do until we drop. We ignore ourselves. We neglect everything. So it's very important to choose the right partner that's going to, let you do until they see that you're doing too much and they're going to make sure you do what's good for you too, But we've lost all that because we don't respect men anymore. We don't respect their opinions anymore. We don't respect their decision making anymore. I might think that I can do, another 2 hours of writing, but he knows I haven't gotten enough sleep in the last 3 days. And, he shuts my computer and tells me to go to bed. You're done. That's it. Most women would think that, I can't even imagine the reactions of most women because they see that from the feminist perspective and not from, the realistic, loving perspective that it comes from, and there's reasons that everything has been the way that they've been. If you ask me, I know it's best for me, sure, but I'm an idiot, just like we all are when it comes to our own selves. And, you have to be able to be objective enough to know, there's a saying that, it's only an idiot that thinks they know everything, that kind of thing. And there's always more. You can only know what you know. You can't know what you don't know. So there's always someone else's opinion you're going to have to take into consideration. And when it comes to ourselves, especially women, we do for everyone else and ourselves last. So it's very important to pick that partner that's going to make sure that you do what's best for you too. And I think a great deal of, the issues that women had way back were, like I said earlier, it took us thousands of years to even realize that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. So it's very difficult to pick the right partner anyway. You have to really know yourself to pick the right partner anyway. And so these women were just dissatisfied with their choices in life. And back then, I guess, divorce wasn't okay. So instead of, saying, well, I picked wrong, I'm getting a divorce or whatever, they just blame society and they got all these other women to jump on the bandwagon. But, truly, it's not a case of that. It's a case of you either pick right or you don't. I can do anything in the world I want, but my family and my home come first. And, that's something he knows that from the beginning that I want. That's the most important thing in the world to me. So when I myself go against those values because I'm not thinking clearly, because I'm focused on what I'm doing or focused on some goal that we're trying to achieve or whatever it is, I think it's critical to have a partner that's going to say, hey, you're done. That's it. Go to bed. Take care of yourself. Go have a bath. Go do whatever you got to do. And that's it. And see that from that loving perspective that it comes from and not what the feminists would have you to believe. Some really silly things that come out of feminists' mouths when it comes to the things men do. But you have to understand men and women. You're lucky to have a man like that, really, I think. Anyway, well, we really listened. We tossed over hundreds of years of history because a few women didn't like the way their life went. And it's got to change now. It's got to change now. And hopefully you'll join me in my pro-femininity movement and be the catalyst to that change with me. So I'd really like to hear from you about this show, your opinions, your experiences, your thoughts and solutions for the future. So write me at studio2@newyorksbesttalk.com. Make sure you put lonely on top in the subject line. And also follow me on @FierceKittyKate. Right. So, and we're also going to be, bringing guests on. Like I said, we'll talk about that soon. But yeah, so it was a great premiere episode and I really enjoyed it. And I thank you for listening with me and hope you'll tune in next Wednesday. And thank you for being here with me tonight. As time goes on, I will have guests relevant to these issues, and I'll welcome your opinions and stories, whatever they may be. We have to remember that no woman is an island, cannot continue to leave our husbands and sons behind in the misguided quest for progress that's already occurred and has had its day. So stay tuned, because up next is Coffee and Cigarettes, news, nonsense, and men. Yes, men. Right. Thank you to HTLA Radio 1 New York, my advertisers and sponsors, and of course, my listeners. Until next time, don't be afraid to bring out the fierce kitty in you. The world misses you. Yeah. All right. Good night.